Okay, I'm responding to philos 71's 5 questions every intelligent atheist must answer. My first attempt at doing this ran long over time, so I might probably have to chop these up into a couple chunks. I'm replying to this video because I actually kind of like you. You seem like a very good-hearted guy. I do not always agree with your reasoning. I think it's often flawed, and I'm going to get into that a little bit, but I really hope my answers do not come off as insulting. It is not my intent at all. I think you have a good heart, and I think you might even have an open mind, and I want to have dialogue with that. Going to start off with even before your questions. There's issues even before we get to your questions and the little perfunctory statement that you have that need to be dealt with. Sorry, I'm not college educated. I'm not about to go to college. I haven't graduated from college. I'm a working class Joe, and sadly college is not likely to ever happen for me, but I like to think, and hopefully my thoughts will be of some use to you. You say there are problems with atheism that are obvious. I'm sorry, I cannot agree with your interpretation on this issue. I do not see the same problems as you. It's not a point I can concede to you. You mentioned that the answers will have to make sense to normal intuition. This is a very important point. Our normal intuition has been honed to deal with a very narrow slice of life, and the scientific process, deductions, all of it have pointed out that a great deal of the world makes no innate sense to our normal human intuition. Across many scientific fields, it's become very clear that the scientific observations, the pursuit of the evidence, has led to a place where the normal human intuition rebels against it, but the facts still indicate these things. One example that I'm going to use is the atoms, actually, the atomic structure of objects. When you think of an object like a rock, you think of a rock as being very solid, and the truth is that a rock is largely made up of empty space. There is very little of substance to the rock, comparatively speaking. It is atoms with vast distances in between them. When you look at an object that could be used to cave in your skull, the human intuition says this is solid, this is an immensely dense thing, but the science actually does not agree with that. And throughout scientific fields, going up to quantum theory, quantum theory rebels against human intuition on so many levels, and so many things in the macrocosmic universe rebel against human intuition. The idea that gravity, we intuit that things fall down, but this is not what gravity actually says. Objects with mass are attracted to each other. All objects are attracted to each other. And then Einstein took that a step further and said that, mass distorts space-time. And, this stuff is enormously counterintuitive. We can't explain the universe in a way that agrees with normal human intuition. Our human intuition was designed to deal with a very thin surface of reality. When you talk about things, the vast energy spectrum that is invisible to the human being, we see so little. Human intuition is a frail thing to contemplate reality, and I'm sorry I had to spend so much time on this point, but I think this is often a source of great schism with some people, that they want the world to make sense in a way that they intuitively think it should make sense, and the world does not intuitively make sense when you really dig deep into its roots. So moving on to your actual questions, you talk about chance of the gaps, and I'm sorry, but it seems like you're trying to take the God of the gaps phrase and reverse it and try and make a new useful tool for creationists. And I'm sorry, but I think you fail miserably at this. When people talk about the God of the gaps, they talk about how ID proponents, creationists, like to look at areas where science has not yet illuminated something, and they say, but that is where God did it. That is where a miracle happens. This is the place where the natural laws break down and the supernatural laws took over, and that's what explains things. And this is something that offers nothing to illuminate the issue. This is a cut and paste of a supernatural explanation for naturalistic phenomena. And throughout history we have had many supernatural claims for what later turned out natural phenomena. Lightning struck somebody in the middle of a field, and people assumed God was unhappy with that person. We look back at it later, and we find out that he was standing in the middle of the field. He was the tallest object. He was the most likely object to attract the lightning. There are naturalistic explanations. The theory of disease dispelled the supernatural theory that diseases were inflicted as a plague by God, and or else witches, your supernatural force of choice was inflicting disease. Well, we found the germs, we found the bacteria, we found the things that made people sick. Pasting in supernatural explanations for things has been notoriously flawed and has not contributed to knowledge. And when we finally actually dug into the gaps and kept on trying to figure them out, that's where it came. And science does not try and do the same thing that religion does with God, with the gaps. Science does not say, but that was chance. Science looks for mechanisms and looks for explanations, and that is where people come up with an enormous misconception of the theory of evolution. They believe that it is all chance-based, and many creationist propagandists like to try and exploit that perception and distort it. And they like to do some very fuzzy math to distort the numbers also. But no, evolution has a component that is chance-based, and that's mutation. And mutations clearly happen. I have one myself. I have a couple extra teeth. It's not a positive or negative mutation in the classic sense of throughout human history. It wouldn't have really helped or hurt me to get to the age where I could sexually reproduce. But the process that weeds out mutations, gets rid of the bad mutations, doesn't really care about neutral mutations, and preserves the positive mutations is not chance-based at all. That's natural selection. Things with beneficial mutations will thrive over their competition and fellows that do not have these. Everything in the world struggles over limited resources, something that in Western society we sometimes forget. We often have plenty, where throughout the natural world such is not the case. But in this competition for resources, that which is better adapted to get them will thrive, will reproduce, will have children that will again, like themselves, be better adapted to get those resources, and they will basically hog up the resources from their competition that did not receive the beneficial mutations, and their competition that receives the negative mutations that makes them even less likely to get those resources. And over time, the ones with the beneficial mutations will reproduce and will thrive, and the others will die out. They just will not be able to reproduce to the same degree, and one will overtake the other. And this is not chance. The mutations are chance-based, but the mechanism that selects what works is not. In fact, a lot of terms kind of break down and translate this for us. There's nothing really sentient selecting one over the other. It's just that one works better, one reproduces, one hogs up the resources it needs to live, and the others don't get that stuff and they die off. Not chance-based at all, the selection mechanism. So hopefully I cleared that up. Throughout your video there seems to be a large chunk of misunderstanding about evolutionary theory. Let's see, I'm not sure how far over time I've ran. I think I've pretty much answered the first question. I'm going to cut it off here and I'll start with another one next.